ke a le leboga badimo ebile ke motlotlo ka dithuso le dikeletso tsa go nkgontsha go ka tlhaloganya semelo sa me. Open hearts, open minds, great spirit we look to find at Pilgrim's journey is told. A new beauty unfolds. Spirit in the wind, love is the cord that binds us.
Hello and welcome to our very last episode in the series of Pilgrim. This time I'm going to be journeying with San Pedro, which is a teacher plant from the Andes. And I'm looking forward to journeying with it since it is regarded as a plant for integration. And given the year that I've had of journeying with psychotropic plants and with transcendental experiences and practices, I am hoping that San Pedro will assist me to transition and move on into the rest of my life. I've also decided to consult with a Sangoma who will help me call in my ancestors to assist me along my path. We are about to start our morning circle before we take San Pedro. I am feeling really good.
Come sit with me and I will pour you some tea and share the medicine of song so you can pray along. Won't you come sit with me and I will pour you some tea and share the medicine of song so you can pray along. Come pray along. Come pray along with me. Welcome to the space, welcome to the circle. This is Nathan. We work with breath, I work with sound, we work with coaching. It's whatever it takes to have that initiation where you can get to transform something in your inner space and outer space. I'm going to bring your attention to this altar, which is the friendship circle. It's a circle where we hold space together for something magical to happen in the middle. The medicine is the teacher that we invite into the space. I'm going to start, in a sense, by creating our container. And what we say in our work is that the tighter the container, the safer the container, the deeper the work. What we do to start sealing the container and creating the container is we do what we call a check-in. We say what we're feeling at the moment, and we speak a little bit about our intentions because we're going to be having a lot of conversations throughout the day about our process, about each other, and we're going to be holding space for how we listen to each other. So I'm going to model it. I'm going to start. My name is Heinrich. I'm checking in. I'm on a very interesting journey where I'm going to be the father for the first time in my life. So that'll be the space that I'll be journeying with, but also the space of just really listening and holding space for you guys and for your journey.
My name is Azura, and I'm feeling excited. I've heard a lot about San Pedro. This is an opportunity for me to commune with the divine masculine, and also not really having had a father figure in my life, not really having any brothers around my age, and kind of always seeking that divine presence in the men that I dated, and noticing that they were always a bit more older than I was and always provided a kind of comfort and security and stability. And I feel like I'm returning, in a way, to a presence that I very much longed for my entire life.
Hi, so my name is Mara. I'm checking in, and I think I'm anticipating and feeling excited, but also very nervous. I've had my kids and been in control and, you know, kind of lived a life that I felt I had to, because just to hold the fort, and they're flying the nest. I want to revisit my childhood and who I was then, because I think life has transformed me in a way that I didn't anticipate, you know. So, yeah, looking forward.
My name is Makgati. My journey right now has taken me to a recognition of how I have really circled through a familiar path throughout my life. And I am now really teaching myself to embrace what I haven't done before. And in that, I'm hoping that I can open up to all of life and, and welcome every facet that life has to give and not filter out the stuff that I deem displeasurable. So this journey is part of that.
San Pedro is actually grown all over South Africa. And as you can see on this property here, we've got like a whole farm of San Pedro, right? It comes from South America, from the Andean mountains, and it has a 3,000-year-old tradition over there, but it has really started finding a new tradition here. And so a big part of this journey is on the one hand about San Pedro, but the rest of it is about this earth, this land that we're on, and how this land communicates to us, how the mountains communicate, how the elements, how the fire communicates. So we're going to be working with the elements and allowing these teachers to speak to us because they are ancient teachers. They have an ancient wisdom. It always starts as a kind of a calling to the medicine. The way we approach it is we approach it like we are coming to meet a teacher. And so San Pedro is very much the grandfather teacher that we are going to be coming to meet, coming to be in the space with, coming to be guided by. So I think it's important to approach it like that. Otherwise, people start talking about, they go, it's a drug. Oh, it's something you take. It's something that alters your state. And it's so much more than that. And I think that's the big message about it. Because it's got incredibly powerful properties for you to self-heal, for you to heal your own inner states and inner worlds.
Can I jump in? Where does the teaching part come in?
It's a sensible conversation. So essentially you're drinking in a medicine, but it activates something in you that is able then to speak to what feels like a consciousness that is talking to you. It's very much a personality that you experience who has a way of teaching you, and we call it the grandfather because it's got a very firm but very caring and very gentle way of teaching you what it is that you need to learn.
A pilgrim's journey is told. A pilgrim's journey is told.
Muy sagrado, my grandfather, you are powerful.
Let's go to the ceremony of the serving of San Pedro.
There is very much a traditional way that we do it in terms of we first create the space, we create a sacred space, we smudge you, we clear the space so that you are ready to receive the medicine. When the Spanish colonized South America, the shamans had been using it for a long, long time, and they basically wanted to suppress it. So they didn't want the shamans practicing, they wanted the people to be learning Christianity and Catholicism. And they outright banned it, I mean, on pain of death. And they taught the people about the Catholic saints. And at that time, San Pedro was called Huachuma. San Pedro, it's a name that was given through their understanding of, they learned about this saint called Saint Peter, who held the keys to heaven. The people were like, well, that's what Huachuma is, the saint who has the keys to heaven. The San Pedro is mainly in the skin area. So that is really where the main medicine is drawn from. So the wax comes off, and then it's actually just in that epidermis, just this area here. And it's either used in a dried form or it's cooked down into a liquid.
How does it taste?
Okay, it does not taste nice. It's got a very bitter taste. So when we drink it down, we try and drink it down as quickly as possible.
And how long does it take effect?
depends. Sometimes it can take half an hour to 40 minutes, sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on how it goes into your system. Everybody is different. They feel it differently. A lot of times people go, I'm not feeling anything, I'm not feeling anything, but wow, the tree is really speaking to me, and I really get this, and wow, I get this. And you go, well, then you're feeling it, And I think that's also the beautiful thing about plant medicines, is that there's no one experience that's the same. And that's something that would be very particular to a drug. If you took a drug, and we would all have the same experience, but with plant medicine, everybody has a different experience because it's an intelligence and it works with your body and your intelligence.
And how do you decide on the dosage?
Intuitively.
Okay. Okay.
Just work intuitively.
Yeah.
The medicine speaks, and you can feel the calling of what is needed in the moment, whether it needs to be a deep journey or whether it needs to be a light journey. Beautiful thing about San Pedro is that San Pedro doesn't have to be this overwhelming experience. I think people think about psychedelics or psychoactive plants as always being this very intensive, I'm going to hallucinate, I'm going to lose control. And San Pedro specifically is a teacher where it's as if San Pedro can just be in the background having a conversation, and it's a very gentle conversation where you like seeing things differently. Whereas with other medicines, you would lie down and you'd very much be in your own reflective space. But San Pedro is a very powerful medicine for conversation.
So it's a good idea to bring an intention.
And the intention is always what brings you to the door. It's not recreation. You don't do it for fun. It's difficult, it's hard, it's challenging. So people come with an intention. People come with, there's a calling in them, there's a difficulty that they're facing, and a lot of people come to plant medicine because they've tried everything else. They need something to shift, and they need to look in a way that they've never been looking before.
I love that. Walking the San Pedro labyrinth provided opportunity to connect not only with the powdered medicine we had just taken, it also helped me to feel grounded and ready to open up to whatever this teacher had for me. Our walk to the dam took us through a pear orchard where we came across a team of very friendly pear harvesters. I couldn't help but ask for a sample.
Thank you. One is fine. Thank you. Thanks very much. Hello, Uncle.
As we walked, we chatted about my experiences and what had shifted for me on my pilgrim journey.
What's the takeaway?
Well, the takeaway off the top, I think our concept of God has been so diminished, and what I have come to experience is God is so much, is everything, is everywhere, and is and is in the breath, my breath, your breath, and is in, God is everywhere. I didn't know that, and I think that when I started this journey, I was looking for a God. And actually, I got exposed and welcomed by all of God, divinity. And so even the word God somehow feels contracting and diminishing. Doesn't really encapsulate the allness, the expansiveness, exactly. Speak to us about your own journey with San Pedro and how you arrived here.
When I did my first San Pedro journey, for the first time, it really profoundly connected to my disconnect with masculinity, with my lineage, because I had completely disconnected from my masculine lineage. The journey was very painful, but it really brought me to what my purpose was. So it really put me on the path of healing men, but also for the masculine holding space for the feminine, for the healing of the feminine, because obviously a lot of damage has been done by the masculine to the feminine, and that healing does need to be held on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what's interesting for me is how my own journey, part of it, is the healing of that, that fragmentation of the masculine and feminine inside of me. And throughout the episodes, that has been a theme in one way or another. Is how do I welcome the masculine inside of me in a safe way, in a way that that isn't violent or isn't angry or but just in a very gentle and assertive manner.
Siyabonga wena mama liye. Oh hey ayo, hey ayo, hey ayo, hey ayo. We use music, whether it's traditional music or whether it's more modern music, but it's all essentially music that is born out of the medicine. And it's what we would call an ikaros, music that emerges from the medicine. Sound is an incredibly powerful guide and an energetic guide, especially in these medicines. I've really been called through these medicines to use my voice.
Yes. Okay.
Taking effect is the worst. Oh, the nausea. Oh. And I'm just waiting for it. I'm feeling like I'm on the precipice. But not quite there yet. And just to get over this bump of nausea, oh, it's horrible. I just have to wait. Wait it out, breathe it out.
I was certainly not the only one feeling challenged by the medicine. We were all struggling with debilitating nausea and overwhelming emotions. But mostly, I was just impatient and wanted this medicine to take effect.
Stretch forth thy arms, stretch forth thy arms unto Zion. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
So how do you feel about San Pedro? Have you met San Pedro?
No, I don't know. This the thing that whoever it is that's here to meet me. No. I'm still it's still destabilizing me. I'm not yet. I'm feeling very nauseous. I want to vomit and poo at the same time.
I was very wobbly and needed help getting down the path. And then the waves of nausea hit again. And thankfully, this time I was able to purge and finally get some welcomed relief.
Okay.
After our time at the dam, we headed back for some light lunch, but frankly, none of us could bear the thought of food, so I distracted myself by talking to the alpacas. The medicine worked differently for each of us, helping us be with whatever was arriving in the moment. And a lot was arriving, from more nausea to rage, to the absolute thrill of childlike play.
We work with Hape as a complementary medicine. Hape also works very powerfully in ayahuasca as well. It's a tobacco base, basically a snuff, mixed with ashes, medicinal ashes, and it's made in the Amazon by different shamans. And what Hape can help do is really shift from the head into the heart.
I have to warn you that it's not my favorite.
Can I tell you, it's not my favorite either. It really is not my favorite. But can I tell you one thing? It does the work. When we get into our hearts, then we start flowing again. In many respects, that's what makes these medicines so powerful, is that they're medicines of courage. They don't fix anything. They call on you to step up and to take charge and to face it and to overcome the discomfort. Okay, we ready? Okay, I'm going to be touching it to your nose.
The hape, oh, suddenly I was taken out of the incredible nausea that I was in. So physically it transformed me quite beautifully. And I was in a complete another space. It was just beautiful open space.
And it's generally in this part of the journey where people are asking themselves quite deep questions about themselves and their lives and their habits, their thought processes, what keeps them in loops, and what does it take to shift that? What does it take to let it go? Just be right here, right now. And somewhere in that right here, right now moment, where there's no place to go, no place we're coming from, there is a wisdom that speaks to us. It tells us very profound things about our lives, moving forward, about who we are, what we really are. And it's beautiful to just tap into that. And that becomes a very powerful meditation within itself. Everyone's in a health space. Nature is holding us. The medicine is holding us. And it'll take us through exactly to where we need to be.
So I didn't take the hape. I was resolute about that. But San Pedro was very much working inside me and took me to an overgrown stone labyrinth, which is precisely where I needed to be to receive the teachings of this powerful plant. So, I noticed that I was repeating patterns. I am repeating my own patterns. And, well, hallelujah, at least now I recognize it. And the minute I recognized it, I thought, okay, stop. And then I realized, well, I can either move forward or back, and so I moved forward. Anyway, here's me walking, and I end up in the center. Not that there's a prize, obviously there isn't. But how did I get to the center? By changing my perspective of the journey, of my own repeated patterns, of what I said yes to when I meant no, what I said no to when I actually meant to say yes, was too embarrassed to say yes to. The tears I should have shed and held them back. The shame that I held of this magnificent body and all its journeys along this labyrinth. And it's all a journey. And by changing my perspective, maybe if I bring some love to it, and some delight, and some sun shield, something to protect against the elements, and some ripe figs, maybe the journey can be not only bearable, not only meaningful, but be freeing. Those alpacas, no, sorry, they're so skittish.
A pilgrim's journey is told. A pilgrim's journey is told.
Come back to your breath, breathing in, breathing out, and breathing in, and breathing out. Sound can literally cleanse you and shift things off you, or take you into beautiful spaces, or take you into difficult spaces. And sometimes the sound guides you exactly where you need to go and allows you to drop into that space and activates things within you, activates deeply ancestral things within you. Now we settle down to the ground now. Surrender to the ground now. Surrender to the ground. Relax and surrender to the ground. Let the earth envelop you. The blockage that people experience tends to kind of show up in the throat. We're not fully expressed in what it is that we need or what our boundaries are. Probably the biggest breakthrough that people experience is when they can actually bring their voice and go, ah, and express themselves in song and express themselves in what it is that they're feeling.
Suddenly, an unknown presence came over me, and I knew immediately that the sacred feminine had entered the room, and she had a lot to say.
What are we doing these medicines for? What are we doing these experiences for? Why are we healing, if not to bring us to dance and song and being fully present in this life?
Yes.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Wow, what an experience. Mind-boggling. I mean, for me, more than anything, is the fact that we sat around here this morning. It's a lifetime away. And it's still a lifetime away because I haven't really actually rebounded fully, but being part of the space was beautiful.
I want to express so much thanks to the two men who held space so beautifully for me so that I could unravel for the first time in what feels like eternity. I was able to be really vulnerable with myself. I felt so safe that I could just see what needed to be seen. And I see how it's going to change a lot for the next coming years of my life.
I have no words. This has been so big, and it continues to be working in me in such a profound way. Things just keep coming, and I'm going to have to practice some form of mindfulness so that whatever needs to stick, I put it in that place, or I allow it to stick in that place wherever it needs to stick itself. I had a lot to reflect upon, not only regarding my San Pedro experience, but also my entire pilgrim journey. And I was grateful for the space provided by Dr. Simon Weitzman for a deepening of this contemplation. So this morning I sat with my journal, having had some really powerful dreams, some really strong dreams last night. And I was looking at a tiger, but it was black and white. And I thought, that's interesting, black and white tiger. And I remember stroking it and hearing it purr. Wow. In the morning, I started journaling. And there were three things. The first theme was around loneliness, my relationship to my body, and relationship to prosperity and material wealth. And in these three, the one thing that was the common denominator was being reminded that, Makgati, remember that whatever you are experiencing, every single one of your experiences is based on the frame that you hold inside of yourself, and how I use that frame as a lens through which I look at the world. And it may not necessarily be that I change behavior, but I change the lens, I change perspective. That expansion in perspective is something that started when I was journeying with San Pedro. And I found myself walking a labyrinth. And I was noticing my pattern. So I saw that I was on the same path, but I was going against the previously trodden upon path. So even though I had walked it, but I was taking it from a different perspective, and I thought,
Ka-ching.
ka-ching, it's a new path. And it brought me just such profound realizations to be an invitation to be patient with myself and to not underestimate the power of change in perspective.
And the perspective is different as you stroke the purring black and white tiger. Black and white, is, as you say, is a kind of binary element, and the mind at a particular level is very binary. So you're walking literally a new path, in a same path in a different way feels like a new path. And that has very strong parallels and correlates in brain science. The overarching concept is neuroplasticity, which is this understanding that the brain regions and pathways and connections change as a result of experience. So if the pattern is consolidated and the brain areas wire together, then we will, in a brain sense, just go down the same pathway. So we call those habits and patterns or conditioning. And most of us don't even know that we habituated in thinking, in feeling, in relating, and in behaving until your perspective is shifted. And then there's this possibility, as described in neuroplasticity, of developing new pathways through new perspectives. And I think there's often an assumption that you've got to change your behavior in order to create a new pathway. But what you're pointing to is that the change in perspective is prior to the change in behavior. And it can work for a while until we come up against somebody else's reality and somebody else's truth, and especially if they're binary, opposite, then that leads to conflict. So shifting the perspective and understanding that perspective can be shifted is the beginning of and the expansion of a kind of waking up in the world and a self-understanding.
Yeah, and then not fighting it when I recognized that I'm repeating a pattern. It felt like a necessary starting point of choosing differently. Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that I've been reflecting on as we've gone through this is the intensity and the fullness and the richness of all these different journeys, with these plant medicines and sacraments and processes with breathing and with dancing and with music and so forth. What is the relationship between the non-ordinary states that you've been exploring and experiencing and the so-called ordinary, everyday, step-by-step experience we call our lives and we call your life?
The journey feels more like a pause point. So you have had an experience of God. How does the world experience you now that you've had that experience? And what I have encountered is that the issues that I had prior to the journeys
Can I guess? They're not gone.
They're still waiting for me. And they say, okay, well, how are you going to apply what you have learned in order to shift these issues? I mean, I've been reading my journal from years and years ago. And many entries over and over again are my reflecting on my relationship to my body and on weight. And I see that I've kept myself imprisoned with thinking about myself in a deficient manner. And what has happened as a result of my journeys, of course the issue still stands, but the decisions that I have made now is, Makgati, remember, change your perspective.
but let learning to love myself be the main motivation.
That might be one of the most useful things that emerges, profoundly useful for everybody who listens into this series, is there's such an assumption that we have to change what's wrong with us, or what we think is wrong with us. And either we ignore that completely, or we go into it full tilt and work very hard at the self-improvement project, which has its place. Yet the realization starts to dawn that the relationship with the patterning is everything. So you're coming into a different relationship with that part, more loving, more understanding of our patterns, and then they change. But we might be walking slightly differently in the same path, but everything is different now.
Yeah. And there's a calmness, there's a stillness that descends. It's a soft landing pad. It's devoid of that antagonistic relationship with self and with the world and with all there is.
I kind of think of it as a shifting from bracing to embracing.
The farm itself, where the retreat took place, is surrounded by pear trees, and it was harvest time. And one of the men, an older man, said, "Oh no, my lady, take one, choose the best one, choose the biggest one." And in my choosing one, it felt like abundance had opened itself up to me. And I thought, oh, well, in what other area of my life do I recognize that I am being gifted? I am constantly being gifted with the ripest, with the juiciest, with the biggest, and yet I'm not aware of it. I realized that in life, everything has its time, and that, they call it divine timing, I guess, in certain instances, but that it doesn't make sense to pick something before its ripeness. Its significance comes from perfect timing. And in being able to discern, readiness is important.
That's real gritty, in the earth, spiritual practice. Awareness, discernment, willingness to be patient, to be with what is, to understand through perspective that timing has its own timing.
And it's in the practice, isn't it? It's not something that happens to me.
Yeah, it's easy to think if you use a medicine or you go on a dance retreat, that's all you have to do and then it's all better. And we have to do the hard yards if we're wanting to wake up, if we genuinely wanting to transform our awareness and our consciousness in such a way that we come closer to a relationship with ourselves and each other in the world that is much less about conflict and more around interdependence. Ubuntu, the deepest wisdom of the African continent,
Absolutely.
is the deepest truth.
Yeah.
So rather than just having that as a concept, how do we live that? And it sounds so much like that journey. The journey has been very much about living into that.
I am here now, and let me walk this journey in this body, through this body, with a commitment, not just with surrender, but with commitment to fully be here and be open to wherever it will take me.
The deep, authentic path of the pilgrim.
Yeah.
It's the path with heart.
A pilgrim's journey is told. A pilgrim's journey is told.
To help me close this year-long pilgrim chapter, I worked with Sangoma Mokwena, who took me to the Berg River for a cleansing ritual. It felt significant to have the masculine hold this with me and to be welcomed and witnessed by dancing children and their mamas.
Ke bantu abadala sizamxelela indaba esizabe sisuka kuni ke mabandla siyabacenga abakwena ke mabandla uthi bavula indlela siyawacenga kodwa nendlendlezane zakowabo kubomme wakhe.
We have just done an invocation, a humble request to our ancestors to help me through this process called my life. And what it is I am here to do on this earth and to walk that journey with purpose and with discernment.
You've got a very strong connection with your ancestors. There's this person who shows to be a granny to you, who's very strong and powerful, who protects you. This person didn't only protect you, but is protecting the entire family. But you are not giving her anything back.
Yeah. When I do any of my work, I've never connected with any of the grandmothers. It's very, very true. And please share my deepest apologies. From now on, I will honor them. Ke a lebogela tso tsotlhe, ke lebogela go mpontsha gore go diragalang. All the things that I have not known about, all the things that have been confirmed, I give great thanks and I honor them. And the reason I have come to this earth is to be of service to what they want.
Now you'll have to get to the water. We'll have to wash you, cleanse you. So these are the two motifs. This is called umnangendlela. It's a type of ungulawu.
Yes.
It's one of the herbs that are very strong for communication with the ancestors.
Okay.
Mainly to assist people to guide them with their path.
Okay.
You will steam with it.
Yes.
You will vomit with it.
Yes.
You will bath with it.
Yes. I'm about to be taken into the river, to be bathed in the river, to be cleansed, so that when the medicine gets used on me, it is meeting a space that is receptive and that is ready to receive the medicine that I will be working with.
You can just stand here.
Stand right.
Yeah. But you need to wash with the water.
Okay. Go right in.
Yeah, go right in. May the communication with her be more stronger, ke bantu abadala. Please be specific, ke bantu abadala, on the things where she goes wrong. Please be able to direct her, ke bantu abadala, to cleanse away imimoya emdaka.
As I bathed in the river, I said many prayers, asking for continued guidance and conveying deep gratitude to divinity, my deceased parents, my ancestors, and all my guides for walking with me along this path that has transformed me.
Abandlalela ukuthula ke sitsho ngankani ke mabandla komkhulu koduma ingetheni elagcwebeni ke mabandla ukuthula ke siyacenga.
After Lukolo prayed over the foaming medicine, he handed me the stick and invited me to continue. This felt apt as an important reminder about my own capacity to heal myself and welcome myself back to my own life. As he washed me and prayed over me, something in me broke open, overwhelming me with a release of tears. I felt seen and welcomed by everything, life, God. This felt like a homecoming. I feel like I have been walked over the threshold and to come to this river here now and to be reminded that my grandmothers are asking for me. It's the biggest gift that I am taking away with me. And it is significant to me that even right here at this river, this shape looks like Africa and it feels like we are at the very tip. This is a beautiful send-off. And I go back home with my heart full and my entire being smiling with humility.
Open hearts, open minds, great spirit will look to find a pilgrim's journey